Hola y bienvenidos a esta lectura. Today we're talking about the imperfect tense, which is essentially one half of Spanish past tense, the other being the preterite tense, which we actually cover in a previous course, Spanish first semester. So in the second semester course, we're talking about the imperfect tense, which, as you'll see, is incredibly, in comparison to the preterite, much more simple in concept. So let's begin by taking a look at regular conjugations in the imperfect tense. So here we have the conjugations for the AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. Right away, what you're probably noticing is that the ER verbs and the IR verbs have the exact same conjugations, which makes it easier on you. AR verbs, for the yo form, you have aba, to form abas, él, ella, usted, aba. Nosotros form, you have habamos, vosotros habáis, and the ellos, ellas, ustedes form haban. Note the written accent here, which becomes important when you're forming verb conjugations using the imperfect tense. And for ER-IR verbs, you have ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. And also make a note of the written accents in all of these verb forms for the ER-IR conjugations. So here we have the regular conjugations and examples of how those conjugations play out in each of these verbs. So you can see enseñar with those AR conjugations. If we take enseñ as the root of the verb and AR as the interchangeable suffix, we can see how AR is then replaced by aba in the yo conjugation form, abas in the to conjugation form, and aba in the él, ella, usted conjugation form, and so on with the other conjugations. Vivir, IR conjugation, the root of the verb being vive. You can see how the IR interchangeable part is replaced by ia, and then ias, and then ia, forming vivia, vivias, and vivia. And again, so on with those other forms. And then ER, com being our root of comer, and the ER being replaced by ia, being replaced by ias, being replaced by ia. And in the nosotros form, you have it being replaced by com íamos, and then here in com iais. And finally, com ian. Now, the beauty of the imperfect tense as compared, for example, to the preterite tense is that there are only 3 irregular verbs in the entire imperfect tense. You compare that to, for example, the preterite tense, which is full of very complex and intricate irregular verb conjugations. It's really sort of a miracle that the imperfect tense only has 3 verbs. Every other verb in the Spanish language will follow those regular conjugations that we've already reviewed. So those 3 irregular verbs are ser, and the conjugations there, era, eras, era, éramos, and make sure that you make note of that written accent here, erais and eran. Ir, iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, written accent, ibais, iban, and finally ver, veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Now ver might not seem too irregular. Indeed, it does look like it has the regular conjugation system of an ER verb, but it is in fact irregular because the root of ver really is just v. So if you take v and then attach the regular conjugation, what you should have, according to the conjugation rule, is via. But you don't. You actually have the E hanging on there. And so it is technically considered an irregular conjugation of the imperfect tense. And so there you have it. The 3 irregular conjugations. Every other verb, again, in the entire Spanish language, follows the regular conjugation patterns that we've already seen in the imperfect tense. And so there you have it. A quick, simple explanation of the imperfect tense. And the beauty of it is that you can't really get more complex with it. It is a simple tense, in as much as we're talking about simple construction of the verbs, the manipulation of the conjugations. Because as you'll see in a later lecture, when we talk about the difference in use, contextual use, between the imperfect tense and the preterite tense, it gets to be much more complicated. But we'll save that explanation for later. I'll leave you here instead with a picture of Pablo Neruda's house in Santiago, Chile. Pablo Neruda was a Nobel Prize winner for poetry. And I had the opportunity to go and tour his house when I was down in Santiago. So we'll see you next time.